live for 3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody. My name is Patrick Dundas. I'm the Director of Education for Integrated Interventions, and I will be the host of this podcast moving forward. I feel like I have some big shoes to fill. We've had some incredibly talented people that have sat behind this microphone, but I'm going to give it my best shot. So joining us today is Joshua Westby. He is the Director of Therapeutic Services for Integrated Interventions. He's been here for over a year, but he has a lot of experience in this field, and I'd like to welcome him to the show today. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. I'm glad you could join us. So tell me about your job and what that entails. So what does the Director of Therapeutic Services do exactly?
That's a good question. I think it's as hard to define as it is to spell. But really what it is managing the therapeutic journey for all of the students at Integrated Interventions, no matter what campus they find themselves. So I work with community-based therapists that work with our students. I see some of our students ourselves. I also help out in crisis intervention and training staff so that they're prepared for anything that comes their way.
How'd you get your start in this field?
About 10 years ago now, I worked in a residential facility for young men, 11 to 18, in a 22-bed facility. Tucked away in the mountains, and it was kind of a luck of the draw. I just stumbled into the job and immediately fell in love. Getting to work with young people as they start to define what their life is going to look like and realize that there are more tools out there than they understand is really gratifying. And from there, I've had lots of different jobs along the way.
What is your favorite part of this job? Now, I know that's a hard one in this field to be able to just define it down to a couple, but if you could choose one aspect, what would that be?
So my favorite part about this field is definitely that I get to work with students and with staff to find their best version of themselves. And it's really rewarding and it's a long process, but every day I come to work to help other people strive to do their best. And in that, I get to be a change maker in a lot of lives. And it's very fulfilling and rewarding stuff.
So I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into the change-making piece because I feel like in this job, we have the opportunity to really work with people where they're at. God, I came up with this amazing thought and then I dropped it. I'm sorry.
I liked where you were going.
Yeah. So when talking about change making, that is a subject, I mean, that could go a lot of different directions. What are some of the changes that we're looking at? Or some of the changes, like from your perspective of being the Director of Therapeutic Services that you're looking to make?
So when our students come to us, for the most part, they have some understanding of a life philosophy, right? When our young men and women come into the program, they have an idea of what their life is supposed to look like or what they want or the rules that they live by. A lot of what we do, and when we talk about that change making, is we help our students to understand that some of their thought process in life is maladaptive. It works against their ultimate goals and desires. And that if we spend a little bit of time in that education piece and learning these new skills and new ways of living life, that we can have and obtain more than we ever thought possible.
How does spiral dynamics play into that mindset of making changes?
Yeah, so when we look at spiral dynamics as a philosophy overall, there is this understanding that young adults, right, 18 to 25 to 30-year-olds, they're kind of experiencing the world for the first time. They're understanding independence in a different way than they've had before, consequence, expectations. And when we think about spiral dynamics, there's a lot of this magical thinking that, oh, I'm an adult now, I have this all figured out, and I don't need anybody else. And so from a big picture perspective, a lot of my job is helping the staff to work with the students and working with the students myself to have them understand that the world is significantly more complicated than they thought possible, and that they have to start putting those pieces together so that they can understand the world outside of the box that they've lived in up until this point. And that's done through skill building and job coaching and education and all of that. But in the therapeutic component, and what I really specialize in, is helping students to understand how to regulate that emotional load that they're going to carry, how they're going to interact with other people, how they interact with staff, what they're going to do when they have a boss that they don't like down the road, and how all those pieces tie into healthy boundaries and coping skills and all the things that we need to be productive members of society.
What do you feel is one of the more challenging areas that are of focus, especially when we're working with, young adults that are still trying to figure out what their life looks like and how they're going to, set themselves up to be able to launch into young adulthood successfully?
So, a big challenge when we look at it through a therapeutic lens is that a lot of students come to us and they've had a lot of therapeutic intervention, right? They've been to therapists, they've been to treatment programs, they've been to group therapies, they've been hospitalized, they've gone through all this process, and they think they have a lot of it figured out. Or they know what to say in the right order to make it seem like they're better in a better place than they are. And so when we look at challenges within the program, within my job, a lot of it is helping a young adult to realize that they can utilize the resources that are around them and really trust in the program and buy into what we're doing. Because if we can't get that buy-in piece, the rest of it is pretty stagnant.
What are those resources specifically?
Yeah, so when we talk about our program, the way that it's designed is that therapy or therapeutic intervention is one facet of a lot of the program. So a student may come to us and they only need therapy one time a week. They really work through a lot of the process and a lot of the things that they've got going on. And they just need that maintaining, somebody to connect with, to check in with, to make sure that everything's going the way that they need it to. Um, so that's one tool. But our students also have the opportunity to utilize education based things and utilize tutors and job coaches and education coaches in the school system. They also have our mentoring staff, which teaches basic life skills and how to integrate all kinds of hobbies and interests into making a fulfilled life. They use community based resources when they want to go out and find community, right? A student integrated could want to be part of an international club at a college, but they don't know how to even have connections with other people and within their peer group. So they're striving for something and they need more support. And so our mentors can work side by side with students to gain those skills.
Why is community integration so important? Because this is a unique one when you think about the therapeutic world and traditional young adult programs or young adult transition programs. The model of community integration is different in regard to what we're doing here. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. When we think about traditional residential treatment, working with young adults, right, 11 to 18-year-olds, we teach this model so that they can be successful within the milieu of the program, right? Here's how you do good. Here's how good translates to a reward. Here's how rewards translate to things that you want, right? If you do the dishes, you get a point. You get so many points you get to go out into the community and go see a movie, right? Which is great when we're teaching structure and stability. We're helping students, young adults, to understand consequence and power and authority and how to accept feedback and all of that. Structured environment provides for that kind of growth. But most of the time, students leave that program, and if they don't go to another supportive environment, they have to utilize these skills and translate them in a way that isn't organic, right? They don't understand anymore. Okay, how do I get the intrinsic good so that I can cash in on what I want? A program like ours here at Integrated allows for that next step of transition. And the community is a huge part in that because we want our students to be set up for success. We want to mirror what home looks like, what life looks like. And we can't do that within the confines of a structure milieu where you only see the same 11 or 12 people every day. We really want our students to go out into the world and experience what it means to build relationships and have that fail or be successful. Go to school and have that fail or be successful and work through why those things are happening so that they can utilize those skills directly into their life the same way they do here once they transition out.
So as a young adult going into the world, and I think about myself when I was, I graduated high school and trying to figure this whole thing out, life and adulting and all that stuff. There are natural consequences to our actions in so many different ways. And the term natural consequences comes up a lot at Integrated. Can you elaborate on what that means and how that applies to the philosophy of Integrated from the therapeutic standpoint that you've been talking about?
Yeah, so the first thing that I think is important to point out is that the word consequence generally always has a negative connotation, but it works both ways, right? A consequence of working really hard is that you get promoted, the same way that the consequence of not going to work means you get fired. So when we talk about natural consequences within the program, it can be really negative things, right? You steal a car, you go to jail. It's a natural consequence. But there are also really positive things. You work really hard and diligently, you gain new life skills, right? And so within Integrated, we're always trying to utilize the world around us in a way that's productive and mirrors what real life is going to look like, right? I think about when I graduated from high school, I started applying for state schools, and a natural consequence of where I was at that age was that I couldn't afford to go to state schools, and I had to figure out what the next step was going to be. And luckily, I had people in my life that were able to guide me through that process, but not everybody does. And sometimes our students come to us, and even though they have those people in their lives, they're not able to even hear the feedback to begin implementing it into their life, right? And the natural consequence of that is that they're now in a program or a different setting, having to learn new expectations so that they can find that room to grow.
One of the beautiful parts about North Idaho, I feel like the Pacific Northwest in general, is that, you get that 4 seasons. You get the traditional, and unless, you're in Western Washington, of course, where it rains a lot more. But the fact that you can have a spring, summer, fall, and winter, it's pretty awesome. And that's one of the beautiful parts of Idaho, and particularly Coeur d'Alene in North Idaho, where we live. But also comes with that as we make that shift over from summer over to fall. Of course, we lose sun, which translates to vitamin D. And there's that direct relationship between seasonal depression and a lack of sun, or lack of vitamin D, rather. And so, as we make that there, we're talking about some of the things that could potentially kind of combat this cycle that can help in making it more manageable, because seasonal depression is definitely a very real thing in the world that we work with, and the students and the population that we work with.
Yeah, the nice thing about integrated is that depression is something that we can work really well with. It's something that we're most effective to help treat because of the model of our program. We have so much support so that we don't have long gaps where students are isolated in their room, not engaging with community or their life. We're able to circumvent that pretty well. When it comes to seasonal depression, a lot of it is finding routine, is making sure to see the positives in the world, right? And obviously, that the trope of, oh, depressed people just need to stop being depressed and they'll be okay isn't real. However, building a life that we can combat that depression with exercise, with light therapy, with finding positives like being able to ski or snowboard, going tubing, or figuring out some other snow based activity, goes a long way in combating some of that depression. And the awesome thing about our program is we work with a wide range of mentors and therapists and clinicians and providers that they can all work together to find those successes for our students so they don't feel so alone in trying to figure out how to stop being depressed.
One of the cool things I feel like about integrated and the mentors that we work with, that they come from such diverse backgrounds,
Mhm.
and a lot of them have an interest in the outdoors.
Mhm.
What are some of the activities specifically that you've seen our mentors engage with
Mhm.
our young adults?
Yeah. So, one of my favorite things when we talk about our mentors is that hobbies and interests and philosophies are important. And we hire mentors that have a really good, well rounded understanding of themselves and what brings them joy in their life. And if they come to us with that, I can help to train and teach into how to make things therapeutic, right? A really good example of that, we had a student that really wanted to learn how to ski. Comes from a family of skiers. She didn't pick it up fast enough. The family wasn't interested in waiting behind for her to learn. So she never did. She came to our program. We're surrounded by several ski mountains, lots of opportunity. And a mentor went skiing with the student and spent hours teaching side by side on how to ski. And because our mentors have the education that they do, when a student gets overwhelmed and throws the ski or throws the pole and gives up, we can provide space, right? Go to the lodge, have some hot chocolate, decompress, try again, call it for the day, try again another day. But be in that process with our students so that they can learn how to engage in that activity that the mentor is really passionate about and the student wants to learn in a way that's therapeutic, that brings out more result than just learning how to ski. Because now we've also learned how to deal with consequences of not doing something right the first time, of building relationship, of getting overwhelmed and saying mean things and having to rebuild that. All of that comes from utilizing our mentoring staff to teach life skills in a way that's dynamic and real and isn't just a do this because you have to kind of thing.
Why is patience so important as a mentor? I mean, patience as just as a, I consider patience to be a life skill, actually.
Yeah, and so the cool thing with what we do here is that because we're not working with our children, because we're not working with somebody that we're emotionally invested in to help us understand ourselves, right? When I take a student skiing, it doesn't matter to me for my personal development if that student learns how to ski or not. Right? Do I want them to learn how to ski because it's what they want? Absolutely. But if they fail at that, am I going to take it personally? Absolutely not. And because of that, it gives us a lot more space to work from. I'm not trying to rush you through a process or expect that you understand how to do something or force the situation so that I can get the outcome that I want. We're just on this journey together, right? And our mentors are trained, and part of the process of becoming a well-rounded mentor is learning how to balance that. How do I be engaged with the student and really want them to succeed, but also be okay if they fail? And if I'm okay if they fail, does that mean that I'm a failure? And if I'm not a failure because they fail, what can I do to help them be successful the next time they try to do whatever thing it is that they're failing at? Right. And if we do that over and over again, students start to find success, and then they find success after success, and suddenly they're learning patience. So then when a mentor is engaging in an activity that they don't know anything about, a student suddenly takes on that role of, oh, it's okay. It's not that big of a deal. Let's try again. Or maybe Frisbee golf isn't your sport and we should try something else. And having that conversation of learning life skills in the reverse.
There's a lot of power though in someone working together to learn something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think almost a vulnerability in some cases, because you're allowing yourself to learn something at the same time that the other person doesn't know either. So working together to learn something, there's a lot of power in that, and we've seen that happen as well. With a mentor will be like, well, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't necessarily have the prerequisite skills to build a birdhouse. Oh, you don't either, but I know we can figure this out together, with the tutelage of someone who does know, So basically we have like Taryn, who is in charge of the farm and handling all the woodworking, all those projects, where she would work with two people that, didn't know how to utilize these tools. So she's teaching them, and then they're teaching each other. There's a lot of power in an exchange like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of power in that, and there's a lot of room for growth. I love an opportunity for a mentor and a student to partake in an activity that neither one of them have ever done. And if we can do that in a structured therapeutic way, we can get some really awesome result. A really good example of that, we have our activities lead who rock climbs, right? And we'll take a mentor and a student that have never been rock climbing before and never even thought about wanting to do it as a hobby, and put them together with this lead, and then they go out and start rock climbing together. And because the student and the mentor are learning this skill side by side, they start to build off of each other in a really organic way that builds relationship that can be utilized in other areas of that student's life weeks or months down the road when they're dealing with some other struggle that carries a lot more weight than just climbing up the mountain.
Well, climbing up mountains, I mean, I feel like that is a great, metaphor, because in a lot of ways, that's what our students are attempting to do. They are kind of climbing up these mountains and these challenges and experiencing and figuring out ways to overcome. And I feel like that's a great, segue into the future,
Yeah. And a lot of our students, they, compared to their peer group, are behind on that trek up the mountain, and they recognize that whether they say so or not. And so a lot of what we're doing is helping a student to recognize that where they are in their journey is their own, and that's totally okay. And because they're working through their own process and their own journey, the way that they climb the mountain or the mountain that they choose to climb can be drastically different than their peer group or other people that they know in their life. That feeling of being behind and wanting to rush through the process leads a lot of our students to being overwhelmed, overworked, misunderstood, and confused. Right. And so when they get to us, a lot of what we do in the beginning, especially in the therapeutic element, is helping a student to establish where they are right now, where they want to get, and how they're going to get there. Not the here's all the steps that we're going to take, but the what are we going to do today to get to tomorrow to get up that mountain.
I feel like that's a great way to kind of transition to the end of the podcast, because we've talked about the beginning, we've talked about the ending, and we're talking about the middle. All the three of the parts, as we're kind of working on a story that's really never fully written.
Yep, absolutely. Our students' process and journey doesn't end when they leave integrated. And that's why our program is so dynamic. It's because we're teaching students how to live the rest of their life, not achieve this milestone and then let it go, get the diploma, move on, and never think about it again.
Well, I appreciate your time, Joshua, for allowing people to kind of get a glimpse into the world of your position. And I know that you'll be joining the podcast in the future, as well as we talk about and discuss some other topics that are relevant to the world of integrated interventions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much.